Welcome to some special bonus training here at lunch today. And so I'm excited to be back to teach for about 15 to 20 minutes on a very specific topic that I know is helpful in every day that you communicate with people. What I'm going to talk to you right now about is people who say maybe. How do you get the maybes into a yes? And maybe equally as important, how do you get the people who say yes later to say yes now? Do you know who I'm talking about? Do you know who I'm talking about? The people who say to you, yes, I want to do this, just not right now. Now's not a good time. Yes, I am absolutely interested. Now is just not a good time. And so I want to talk to you about how to get maybe into yes and yes later into yes now. Right now in the chat, why don't you type in which one do you encounter more, the maybes or the yes but laters? This is a simple vote. Do you like the maybes? Do you see a lot of those? Or the yes laters? Do you see a lot of those? I see later, maybe later, that's both of them. Not now, yes later, yes later, yes later, yes later. All right, looks like yes later's winning in that room. Maybe, yes later, yes later. Looks like it's pretty close in that room. So, I'm going to give you 4 very specific things that you can do anytime you communicate that are going to help the maybes turn into yeses and the yes laters turn into yes now. Actually, the first of these happens before your conversation. Before you get on the phone, before you get on the Zoom call, before you give a presentation, you need to have clarity of purpose. You need to have absolute clarity of purpose. What does that mean? You need to know before the conversation, what's the next thing that I want them to do? Because if you're not certain about it, they're not going to be certain about it. If you don't walk into the conversation saying, I know what I want them to do next, and you design the whole conversation, your opening story, your teaching, and your call to action. If you don't design all of that based on clarity of purpose, what do I want them to do next? Because here's what I know. If you get to the end of that conversation and you say, you have 3 options. You can do this, you can do this, you can do this. That leaves them scared and confused, and when people are scared and confused, they freeze, and they do nothing. And so clarity of purpose, going into the conversation knowing this is what I want them to do next, is so important. Let me give you the second of the 4 very specific things that you can do in any conversation to get people to say yes now, not yes later. The second is one that I talked about last night. One of the things that I talked about last night is talking to people about the status quo. Talking to people about what stays the same compared to what changes. What did I ask last night? Do people generally like change? No, people don't like change. So if your offer to them is, this will change everything, that's not an attractive offer. That's a scary offer. Do scary people buy? No, they freeze. Do scary people sign up? No, they say, I want to do this. I'm just a little scared right now. I think I'm going to wait. So how do you help them through that? You help them through that by pointing out some things will stay the same. Don't worry, you'll still be able to do this from home. Don't worry, you'll still be able to spend time with your kids. Don't worry, you will still be in control. Let them know all of the things that will stay the same and the few things that will actually change. And you'll lower the fear. Every time you do that, you lower the fear. A little bonus tip for you. Speak in a lower voice. Speak in your lowest voice. You got your nose voice, got your throat voice, got your chest voice. Speak in your chest voice. Why? Well, when you speak in your chest voice, your pace of speaking slows down. If I talk to you in my nose voice, I'm going to talk fast. And when I talk fast, do you know what that does to your stress level? What does it do when somebody talks fast to you all the time? Does that raise your stress or lower your stress?
Raise.
It raises your stress. So when I'm having this conversation with someone who's been overwhelmed by change this year, the pandemic has changed where I work, how much money I make. The pandemic has changed how I celebrate holidays. It has changed so much. And you have a choice. You can either raise people's stress levels by speaking in a fast, high tone, or you can calm people by speaking in a lower tone and a slower tone. This is great research out of Great Britain in a book called The Messengers by Stephen Martin and Jonathan Marks. Who do we trust? They talk about that lower register, speaking in that lower tone, which will slow your pace naturally. You don't have to do anything to think about it. Lower you speak, the slower you speak, the calmer it is for the person you're speaking to. And so point out the things that stay the same, not just the things that will change, and speak in a lower register. Those are two things that you can do. All right, the third thing that you can do to help, and by the way, these are 4 things I'm teaching you out of 15 things that we build into every presentation that we write. And at the Presentation Power 2-day workshop, that's coming up in February, I'm going to help everybody who's at that workshop. Insert all 15 of these into their presentation. I'm going to teach you all 15 of them and show you how to do them. They're easy to do. You just change a few words. You put them right into your presentation. Don't worry, it's still your story. Don't worry, you can still deliver it to the same people in the same way that you have always delivered it. Don't worry, you'll still be able to customize the story any way that you want, but we are going to change the results that you get. See what I did there? That was status quo theory. I told you 3 things that are going to remain the same, and the one thing that's going to change, which is the result. All that's going to happen at the Presentation Power Workshop in February, and in just a few minutes, you're going to be shown a special opportunity for those of you that the Accelerator program wasn't exactly perfect for, that the Accelerator program wasn't possible for. We're going to give you an opportunity to get some of that presentation power training, because we know it's the thing that's going to make the difference for you in 2021. It's going to be a huge needle mover, a huge changer of your future in 2021 if you can just get better at speaking and talking and telling your story and presenting. That's going to make all the difference in the world. All right, let's talk about the third of the 4 techniques that'll get people from maybe to yes and yes later to yes now. This technique we call ego bias. Ego bias is the idea that everybody wants to be in control. You want to control your own future. Raise your hand right in front of the camera if you want to control your own future. Let's see if anybody here wants to control their own future. Really? Not everybody? Susan Blizzard, you don't want to control your own future? Dana Dietz, you don't want to control your own future? Come on! You want to control your own future? Well, here's what I know. Everybody wants to control their own future. And so here's how you want to communicate with somebody who's thinking about sticking on maybe, or thinking about sticking on yes later. We don't want to leave your future to chance. We don't want to leave your future to circumstance. What's going to determine how your 2021 goes? The virus? The election? No. Chance? Circumstance? No. You get to control what happens in 2021. You get to decide. So, let's say you have a health-related product, okay? How do you want your health to look in the next 12 months? Do you want that to be left up to chance? Do you want that to be left up to circumstance? Do you want to be left up to whether there's a vaccine or not a vaccine? All those things are out of your control, but that will not determine your health in 2021. Watch how my voice gets lower and slower now. What will actually determine your health in 2021 are the choices that you make this week, are the choices that you make right now on whether to join this program or not join this program. Don't leave it up to chance. Don't leave it up to circumstance. You get to decide. See what I did there? I said it's not going to be out of your control. It's going to be in your control. And this technique, by the way, has never worked better than it does right now. Why? Because we're just coming off the greatest 10-month period of life being out of control that anyone has ever experienced. And so when you give someone the opportunity to put life back in their control, it makes all the difference in the world. Let's say that you're selling financial services. You're helping people with their finances. Here's how it would sound. How is your retirement going to look? And what's going to determine that? You think that's going to be left up to luck? You think that's going to be left up to the stock market? You don't control those things. You think it's going to be left up to the world economy or the election or the pandemic or when the vaccine comes? Don't leave your future. Don't leave your retirement. Don't leave your financial health and the health of your family up to chance or circumstance. What actually will determine what your retirement looks like are the decisions that you make, are the choices that you make right now. See what I did there? I took a situation that was out of your control and I put it into your control. And that's ego bias. And so when you're communicating to someone on the telephone, when you're communicating to someone on a Zoom call, tell them that we don't want things to be out of their control. We want things to be under their control. And you're going to see the maybes turn into yeses, and you're going to see the yes laters turn into the yes nows. I'm going to throw in one last technique for you here. This technique is called say your own name, okay? What I want you to do a couple times during any conversation, during any presentation. This one works particularly well in group presentations, social media. Anybody make a commitment that they're going to work on social media this year? Who's going to work on their social media this year? Okay, if you're going to go on Facebook Live, speak to a big group of people, and you want them to communicate with you, interact with you afterwards, do this. 2 times during every Facebook Live, refer to yourself by your first name. People come up to me all the time and say, Pat, what's the one thing that I can do that'll move the needle the most? And the answer is, refer to yourself by your own name. You see, I just did it. I referred back to myself by my own name. I was taking my garbage cans down to the end of the street the other day, and my neighbor was taking his garbage cans down too, and he yelled across the yard, Pat, is today recycling day? And I said, no, that's next week. Ooh, there, I did it again. Did you hear it? I referred back to myself by my first name. Why do you do that? You do that because one of the biggest barriers when you're speaking to a group, to the follow-up conversation, which is your goal. Remember, clarity of purpose. Why am I going on Facebook Live in the first place? Clarity of purpose. I'm going on Facebook Live so they will have a conversation with me. They will schedule a conversation with me afterwards. What's the biggest barrier when you're speaking to a group to somebody coming forward and saying, I would like to have a follow-up conversation? You know what the biggest barrier is? The biggest barrier, the first barrier, is what would I call you if I start talking to you? What would I call you? And you can actually train your audience what they should call you. People come up to me all the time and say, Pat, what's the one change I could make in my presentation that would matter the most? Ooh, you see what I did there? I just trained you. If you ever email me, if you ever bump into me at a conference, and you see me in the hallway, and you come up to me, you know what you're going to say? You're going to say, Pat! That's what you're going to say. It works. Trust me. I've seen tons of people who don't do this. When they walk off stage or when they finish a presentation, crickets. Nobody around, nobody having conversation. And this is the only change that they made. The only change that they made was a couple times during their presentation, they referred back to themselves by their first name, and now when they walk off the stage, dozens of people come up. Now when they get off of Facebook Live, their direct message, their messages, Facebook Messenger's loaded. They're having trouble keeping up with it. Why? Because they trained the audience what they should call them, and that is the first barrier to having a conversation with you. It's also great branding, by the way. Watch Jimmy do it. Jimmy likes to be called Coach Jimmy, and so when he's presenting, he'll be like, people come up to me and say, Coach Jimmy, what should I do about this? You look at his email inbox, you look at his messenger, Coach Jimmy, Coach Jimmy, Coach Jimmy, Coach Jimmy. He has lowered the first barrier to the follow-up conversation. When you lower the first barrier to the follow-up conversation, it makes all the difference in the world. And so those are 4 things that you can do to get people to go from maybe to yes, and yes later to yes now. Number 1, clarity of purpose. Don't go into any conversation without knowing what's the one thing I want the audience to do, this person to do, whoever you're speaking to, what's the one thing I want them to do next. Number 2, status quo. Don't just talk about what's going to change. Always start with what's going to stay the same and finish with what's going to change. Lower your voice and speak from your chest. That'll slow you down and be more trustworthy and calming rather than raising the stress level. Third one is, status quo theory, and the third one is ego bias. Ego bias is this is not out of your control. In a year where everything else was out of your control, this one is not out of your control. And if you're offering a business opportunity to someone, that's one of our Fab 5 presentations. If you're offering a business opportunity to someone, talking about the finances, if you're speaking to somebody who's in the service industry and their job is in peril because of the pandemic, if you're speaking to somebody who's been rocked by this, your financial future is currently out of your control. We don't know how long restaurants are going to be closed. We don't know how long people are going to be afraid to travel. It's totally out of your control. But your financial future in 2021 is not out of your control. Do you hear my voice change? When I was talking about things being out of control, I was using my nose voice, talking fast. And when I talked about you taking control of your own financial future, I dropped down into my chest voice, and my voice naturally slowed down. So I made not deciding to work with me stressful, and deciding to work with me calm and comforting, like a warm blanket. Makes all the difference in the world. And then the fourth one is to refer to yourself by your first name, lowering the barrier to anybody who wants to have that next conversation with you, who wants to reach out with you on social media. Of these four, how many of these four did you find valuable? You can put in the chat right now, 1, 2, 3, or 4 of these 4 strategies. How many of them did you find valuable? 4 of them, 1 of them, okay, 1 out of 4, that wasn't bad. 4, 4, 4, 4, I love it. I love it so much, I'm gonna give you 1 more. And don't remember, these are just 4 of the 15 that we're going to teach, and not just teach you, we're going to help you insert them right into your presentations, your story, your third-party story, your opportunity presentation, your onboarding presentation, which I love, and your skills training presentation that you do. The Fab 5 presentations, we're going to talk all about them in a 2-day workshop. Presentation Power coming up in February, and in a few minutes, they're going to come out and talk to you about that opportunity to come to that workshop, and get those presentations going, because it's going to be a huge needle mover for you. Okay, I got time for 1 more. I'm going to give you 1 more, and then then I'm going to introduce the man and the legend. Eric's going to be right back out here with some more bonus training for you. But first, I'll give you 1 more that you can do to help people decide, and it's called mental accounting. Most people are bad at math, so most people just simplify things to, are things balanced? In our minds, we always want things to be balanced, okay? So if I was selling a really luxury item, like a $10,000 watch, I would use mental accounting to sell it. You spend a lot of money on stuff that you need. Why don't you just spend some money on stuff that you want? And as human beings who are bad at math in general, we just try to balance things, okay? Like, let's say I was talking to somebody on my team about spending more time doing this, because I know they're not spending enough time doing this. You spend a lot of time helping other people. Why don't you spend some time helping yourself? And as human beings, we try to get these things to balance. There's lots of things that are out of your control. Why don't you sign up for something that puts it in your control? Oh, I combined 2 of them there. See, I combined ego bias and mental accounting. And so one of the ways you can get people to go from maybe to yes is to have them balance the equation. You spend lots of money on this, why not spend a little bit on this? And they'll try to balance them. You spend lots of time on this, why not spend time on, you've been playing it safe your whole life. Why don't you take a risk? And we'll try to balance those 2. That is mental accounting, and it's a great way to get people to go from maybe to yes. You know by now that I'm super passionate about you becoming better at your speaking, you becoming better at your conversations, and you becoming better at presenting. And the reason I'm so passionate about this is I know the difference it can make in your business. I know the difference it can make in your life. And most importantly, I know that this is how you impact the life of others. I know that you have a servant's heart, that you are in this to create revenue for your family and for you for sure. But I know that deep down inside, you want to serve others and leave a lasting and positive impact on this generation and the next. And I know that being a better presenter, being a better communicator, being better at telling your story is the one skill you need to move the needle and have the lasting and positive impact on this generation and the next. So thank you very much for being here today. Thanks for listening to this bonus training. I want to introduce you to Eric Worre. Thanks, man.
Pat Quinn, ladies and gentlemen. That guy is the speaking whisperer. He is so bright, so smart. He's one of my favorite people to listen to because it's just all so logical and it all just makes sense. Dean, is just another level for me as far as understanding how to be able to connect with prospects in a meaningful way. And a surprise this morning for me was Barry. Barry is so smart, so bright. And what we want to do with all of this, and I know that this is a little bonus session that we're doing here together, is what we want to do is equip you and give you some options, right? When this lunch break is over, you're going to we're going to go into turbo mode, just so you know. We're going to go into turbo mode on personal transformation. Who's ready for turbo mode and personal transformation? Raise your hands, please. All right. This has been an amazing 3-day experience. For me, I hope it has been for you. But turbo mode, let me tell you what that looks like. That looks like Grant Cardone talking to you about how to take massive action. That looks like we convinced Dean to come back and help you develop unstoppable confidence. We asked him to hold his plane. Can you hold your plane? Stay for a little bit longer and share about how everyone who's part of this program can experience unstoppable confidence. We got Trent Shelton, who's going to be coming and teaching you how to overcome your fears.